Hi, thanks so much for joining the Cannabis track of Boulder Startup Week. We're so excited that you chose to check this out. I'm Cilly Daly. I'm the Director of Development and Operations for Canopy Boulder, and we are excited to put this panel on for you. What you're about to see is a really great conversation between an expert in cannabis and an expert in sort of the alcohol industry, moderated by Sean Staler of Michael Best, which is an amazing law firm that works with startups in both those industries. So we hope you enjoy it. I hope you learned something, and I hope you join us on our other Cannabis track events this week. Thanks.
All right, so how do we want to start? Do we want to get into
Yeah.
introductions? How about you start first, Sean?
Yeah. No, well, thanks so much. And sorry for the nerdy headset. As those on this call know, I was just having some tech issues. So appreciate that. But no, I think, Kate, honestly, I know Tommy a little bit and I know Celia, but I don't know you. So first of all, I hope you go by Kate.
Yes.
Okay, great. But yeah, if you could tell us a little bit about you and Azara, I'd love to know more just personally.
Absolutely. So I started in the cannabis industry when I was 18 as a trimmer, and it was right as medical was starting up. And I kind of worked through the vertically integrated businesses from cultivation and manufacturing to store because we had the full suite of licenses, or I guess there weren't licenses when we were first starting out, but we did end up with licenses in 2010. And then when I was about 23, 24 is when everything went to adult use, and I was in the right place at the right time with the right skill set. So I became the first metric consultant in the state of Colorado, actually working with the enforcement division as well as metric to kind of allow the industry to integrate and allow some perspective from an industry side to help them grow. And eventually moved into the consulting side with doing audits and helping with employee training, writing operational procedures, and then eventually got into the licensing aspects, and eventually grew to about 200 clients, and I couldn't do anything anymore by myself. So we decided to automate what we were doing, and I found a friend from high school who was an engineer who built the initial version of Azara, and we've since built so many other really cool components to it and grown from there. But what Azara does is it basically is like the TurboTax of compliance. It gives you all of the forms that you need, very spoon-fed, insert here type platform of not only the regulations, but that are easy to navigate because they're more bite-sized. They have them by categories, all the forms, document storage, notifications, things that make the compliance side of things a little more easy for the day-to-day operational stuff that they have to use it for.
Super cool. Holy cow, what a need. Yeah, we deal with so many folks who are struggling with that on such a high level.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and that's the thing is like even people who have been doing this for as long as I have, which I think it's like 12 years now. I mean, it's a struggle because you're running a normal business, but then you're also having to do all of these things that most normal businesses don't, like track who's in the facility, who's not a customer or an employee, tracking the employees you have, being able to determine what's going on with your security systems and advertising and all these different components. So and some people don't even read the regulations, so they don't know what it is that they need to be tracking.
Oh, that's awesome. And so, and especially just such a moving target that this industry in particular, one of the things I want to talk about later is, which kind of intersects with Tommy's world, is the delivery model, and as that's going to grow from medical to recreational, and then obviously Tommy's in the alcohol space, but it seems like a perfect industry because the regulations are changing so quickly. Trying to find just one person or one opportunity is just not a good way to get that handled, I'm guessing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, we'll be back, but Tommy, maybe if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about Handoff and what you guys have been up to.
Sure. So Handoff is a Denver-based we're a chat and voice-based app that instantly recommends and delivers beer, wine, and spirits with the push of a button. We're able to fit our recommendations to any budget or taste preference, and ideally make it like texting your best friend to bring some alcohol to the door. Like I said, it's chat based. So functions in a chatbot style interface. And we try to keep things really light and fun within the chat itself. And then have your wine or liquor delivered to your door by a local liquor retailer. We've actually recently rolled out a brewery tap room feature as well. So I'm sure we'll get into it, but based on how things have ended over the course of the last couple months, breweries are now running pickup operations as well as their own delivery operations. So we're able to plug in our software there. So we're continually finding new areas for our, the handoff software as well as our app. So very exciting, but also lots of regulatory hoops to jump through, which is why we're sitting on this panel here today. For us and for our team to navigate sort of some of those regulations. But yeah, lots to discuss.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you don't mind, just since we're chatting, tell me a little bit about the pickup and the local brewery. Let's just get into it. Yeah. I know we have a lot of mutual friends in that space.
Yeah, sure. So breweries, as many know right now, are going through a pretty tough time with absolutely no on-premise dollars being funneled through their businesses. They're in a bit of a cash flow crunch. So our platform, as I mentioned, we're able to actually plug directly into a given, under traditional circumstances, a given liquor store's inventory systems on a live basis, and have those presented on our app to shop from for delivery. So basically what we've done is taken that exact same model to breweries who are now running these ragtag pickup operations or delivery operations. And we're basically able to start sending them what a proper handoff order would be with their restricted inventory. You know, instead of a liquor store having 20,000 plus SKUs, we're able to bring a local beer or a local brewery onto the platform. And although they may only have, 10 beers that they're pouring it for the time being, people are really enjoying that side of our product. It's allowed them to continue supporting local businesses and has allowed our platform to, kind of differentiate itself based on the incredible beers that we have available here in Colorado and on the Front Range. So it's been great for us, but traditionally, as I mentioned, breweries legally cannot facilitate deliveries. So the 3-tier system in alcohol, very complex, incredibly antiquated, hasn't changed since 1933, but basically has put in place, particularly in states like Colorado, that retailers have to be the ones that actually facilitate the deliveries themselves. This was only lifted based on current circumstances for breweries to be able to do so, but we're really looking for this feature to kind of sustain itself even when things do return to normal from a pickup perspective. Just giving online visibility to breweries, craft alcohol brands that are unable to actually monetize online audiences because they aren't retailers and they're not making deliveries. Handoff kind of bridges that gap in the antiquated 3-tier system for them. So lots more to come there, but this is kind of our first stab at it, and it's gone very well.
Yeah. Well, we'll come back to that because I even just for the main business or the original business before this crazy time happened, I think it's really interesting how you navigated through, I guess, some of these regulations, because a lot of people have had the idea but haven't really figured out a good platform to do it. So let's put a pin in that, and we'll come back to that. So Kate, just coming back to Azara. So I heard a little bit about how and why you started it, but as we've seen, especially during this time where it's an essential business, and people, I'm watching different pickup lines and different ways. What are kind of some of the challenges from the new regulatory challenges, or even just the ones that have existed that you're really seeing top of mind or top issues?
So in terms of issues, I mean, I try not to think of the regulation shifts as issues just because having been in it for so long, you've seen so many changes and drastic changes, like at the drop of a hat, you have to be ready to pivot. So, it's what I've been training for the past however long. And I'd say it's actually created more opportunities than anything else, because as they add more regulations, there's more chances to interact with clients, go in and do new types of audits where, hey, let's check your systems that you have in place. Let's update those standard operational procedures for things that we haven't considered, like pandemics, like all these other things that could potentially transpire that we would never have dreamed in a million years would, but, somehow are. So it's been a really interesting time because obviously you don't want to be going out doing sales, things like that from a business standpoint. But from creating new features, being able to interact, the consulting element of things, it's actually been a great opportunity. So making sure that we keep in touch with the existing clients and we do have the continued education, plus all of this really cool tech that people are now getting used to for the meetings, for the connectivity that, we can't necessarily have otherwise, has, I think, kind of conditioned people to move to a more techie aspect, to understand the need and importance of tech aspects within their business. So I think it's been really neat to watch, actually.
Yeah.
Not to take a positive spin on a negative situation, but
I think we have to, otherwise, we're all going to go a little crazy. So, no, try and find some silver lining. So, I mean, to that end, again, where so many folks are disrupted from being able to physically come to a location, I would imagine Azar is just like an amazing platform to help, because it is so tech-based and so platform-based. So what are some of the key issues or sort of, I just think about, because I've been in the industry a long time too, and it was such the Wild West, especially when it went, to recreational, and everyone was trying to figure things out, whether it was landlords who were leasing space to grow operations, can we even do this, to when we started the regulatory side. So, I mean, what are some of the things that you think Azara really does? And am I saying Azara right? I've only read it, not said it. Okay. Okay, awesome. I mean, what are some of the issues that you see that people are, frequently blowing stop signs, or big sort of issues that you think you're really helping with?
So we kind of close the gap of understanding and providing information. So generally in the space, it's, it started off as like basement businesses. So it was, families, mom and pop shops, everybody was friends. And now we have an actual industry that's regulated and it has more of a corporate vibe, but still that mom and pop vibe. It's a weird hybrid depending on where you go and how long people have been in it, or where they came from. And so to see the industry kind of shift like that, it's been really nice to, I guess, how do I put this? Have that like grassroots feel within the space. And I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, that's okay. No, I just think, I just saw so many headaches that people were dealing with. And frankly, there wasn't a good source or platform, whether it's lawyers or accountants or whatnot, just to help people. And so it seems like you're just perfectly positioned, especially, and I don't want to keep saying regulatory, but like, sort of the compliance side of this business is so important, to your point, much more so than a lot of other businesses.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing me back on track. I think that the whole point is that, we have a business that's based around healing, medicine, education. It's new, sometimes frightening, especially when you get into the adult use side of things. And so to be able to have at your fingertips all the information that you need, because you're going into it because you're passionate about the patients, you're passionate about the product or the plant. That's your focus. You don't want to be worrying about, did I put the right wording on this label, or did I, have as much information that I need before I go and try to advertise this product and bring it to market. So what we do is we just make it so that it's easy, it's accessible. You can get it on your phone, on the computer, keyword searches. You have support 24/7 by consultants and myself that are all connected into the system. Azara means to be helpful and generous. And so what we're trying to do is exactly that, because nobody that is going to educate patients about the medicinal aspects of this plant or that is going to sell it is really well versed in compliance. And I mean, when you think about your average person, nobody just sits around and reads laws unless you're a nerd like myself or lawyers that are, being paid to do it. So it's been really cool to be able to say, okay, well, let's take this otherwise language of its own and translate it into the language that we need it to be in, so that people can ensure that they can continue doing what they're passionate about rather than focusing on all the other things that come with it.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. One of the analogies I often give to our clients and I should mention I am a lawyer who heads our cannabis practice at Michael Best, but is that we're plumbers. So I always think of our business owners and our entrepreneurs as the architects, right? Like they're the visionaries. They're the ones trying to create something unique and differentiating. And lawyers, and also on some level, sort of regulatory compliance and accountants, we're the plumbers. Like you want to make sure everything works so that the people can do what they want to do, what their sort of highest and best use is, what their calling is. And if you don't have good plumbing, really bad things can happen. So it's important, you could get shut down, you could go out of business, all sorts of things. But really, like you want us to exist in the background seamlessly and be really supportive. So no, I love that you're doing this. Yeah.
Yeah. And you know what? It's really great too, because we actually do work with our biggest thing is that the license is the one that is ultimately responsible for everything that they do, regardless of whether they're using a lawyer, a consultant, a platform, a suite of all three of those things. And so it's really important that they do cover their bases and exhaust all of the options before they get into some sort of trouble in any sense. And we always recommend, that you have a good lawyer, that you have a cannabis lawyer, because somebody who's going to understand how the industry operates and how to navigate all of the different regulatory bodies that don't necessarily talk to each other, but are requiring them to work together, like the health department, OSHA, things that you don't even think about, that you're like, oh shoot, how's that going to tie into the regulations that are specific to my industry? And, not even understanding that there's also additional things that you need to know in order to operate this business. So it's nice.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. It's awesome. Well, Tommy, switching back to you a little bit. So speaking of architects, I mean, how did you come up with the idea for Handoff, and then maybe explain to us a little bit of, whatever you're comfortable with, of how you're navigating this sort of unique niche that you found to really be a great service in the community.
Sure. Yeah. So I can actually kind of weave those two answers together, funny enough. So initially we started out as a voice skill. So we essentially, as a team, myself and my two co-founders, Caden and Miles McKenzie, we had this fascination with voice technology, basically trying to figure out how in the world we could build a voice skill that had everyday implications for everyday businesses. It's kind of where things started. So we built an Alexa skill, which was the kind of a first of its kind, comprehensive voice first shopping experience, basically making alcohol ordering as simple as saying, hey, Alexa, order me a bottle of wine, or get me the Odell IPA, whatever it may be. So the most natural form of communication, naturally being able to order something like that, we thought was pretty cool. The first thing we ran into was Caden and Miles, who were on the technical side, were messing around with a beer of the day skill. So basically being able to pull from local breweries and just giving you a beer of the day, from their list of available beers. And then naturally as conversation kind of ensued, we started to wonder why we couldn't, order said beer that was given to us on beer of the day and have it delivered. Which led us to go knock on some doors in Denver locally. We knocked on the door of Bonnie Bray Liquor on University, if anyone's familiar. And basically we got a meeting immediately with the owner, and we pitched him this idea of this voice-driven ordering experience. And he essentially, looked us in the eye and said, hey, if you guys build this thing, we will be your first client, and I'll guide you guys through all the, regulatory, the regulatory infrastructure of what alcohol delivery really looks like. So for us, being new to the alcohol space, having built our platform somewhat from the technical perspective, we were in a position where we were basically, we were mentored by one of the top alcohol delivery businesses in the state. And we're luckily able to kind of begin to navigate some of those regulatory, gray areas, if you want to call them that, within alcohol delivery, which I can go into what those. Alcohol delivery is legal in the fact that the liquor license holder themselves has to facilitate the delivery. So on our side,
Okay.
not only business called handoff because we like to, the user to be handed off their goods, but we quite literally hand off orders to local liquor retailers. And then they facilitate the deliveries, they process payment. And basically once the order is placed via our tech platform, that order and that customer becomes theirs. So that was essentially kind of the aha moment for us. And then it was all about refining our platform to make the user experience incredibly enjoyable, because that's where alcohol is unique, right? Actually, we were chatting about this, Kate and I, prior to the call, but another interesting thing that speaks to alcohol and kind of the online space is that people enjoy going into liquor stores and finding an associate and having a human conversation. I like to drink IPAs. What would you recommend? I'm having, 10 people over tonight for tacos. What should we drink? Those sorts of questions that are all very kind of expose the mystique of alcohol, so to speak. That experience simply did not exist online. To translate that experience into sort of your classic e-commerce experience did not really exist. So as I mentioned, our first stab at that was the voice side of things, and that's really kind of translated into our chat-based app experience that is now our main product line. But really just making sure that because it is being brought online and because delivery is, one of the main factors of our business, that we're staying compliant, which was step one. But step two is having that be an enjoyable experience for the user. Because at the end of the day, if it's not enjoyable for the retailers and if it's not enjoyable for the user, then, what's the purpose? So checking all those boxes, and we continue to check them every day just to make sure that we are doing things correctly. But we found kind of a sweet little spot where we're able to not only provide an enjoyable shopping experience to users, but cash flow and new, drive retention and engagement for local businesses as well.
Yeah. So, and just for clarity, who actually, if I'm on the Handoff app, which maybe tell us where we can get that too, but if I'm on the Handoff app and I'm chatting with someone and I want to get a Malbec and, maybe a Riesling and some IPA, who actually is going to deliver that to me then?
Yeah, that's a great question. So all deliveries are facilitated by a W-2 employee of the given liquor store. So that's, the side of the legal framework that says the holder of the liquor license and a member of, a W-2 employee of that given establishment has to be the one to facilitate the deliveries. The next question we naturally get, which I'm sure you're both thinking right now, is who checks ID? The W-2 employee that facilitates the delivery is trained and is responsible for checking ID at the door. ID scan, signature capture all take place at the door when the order is placed, or rather when the order is delivered.
Delivered, yeah.
And that's how we've continued to roll things out, even with our new feature that I mentioned in the intro with breweries. Those are all still being facilitated by employees of the given brewery, of the given store. And then myself and my team, we run the marketing for the app, which you can get on the App Store as well as Google Play, the the Alexa Skill Store, as well as the Google Home Store, Google Action Directory is what that is called. So yeah, I mean, for us, it's basically just getting users to the app, and then we send customers directly to local liquor stores and breweries.
And I have to say, it's very easy. I actually downloaded it right before we started this just because I'm not a big drinker. And so it was really appealing to me because, I know beer, I know wine because everybody knows those things, but haven't really been able to explore. So it was really appealing to hear that you could talk it out and kind of get suggestions. So who knows what to explore. And I set it up maybe in like a minute, not even. You put in a couple different pieces and then all of a sudden you're in there and it's already interacting with you. So I was impressed.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We try to keep it simple from top to bottom. And you would be the ideal audience, someone that doesn't know what they're looking for. We hope to kick people some really cool recommendations, ideally local establishments as well. Yeah, thank you. That's very, very kind.
do think, at least I can say too, it's really daunting if you're, like you said, going to a party or trying to like pair something, go to these huge stores. It's just like overwhelming. And I think one of the reasons sometimes I like going to small stores is it's like you can talk to someone who knows what's up, who has, you know, a history with the spirits. So being able to, and especially in this new era where, you know, it's a little disconcerting or challenging sometimes to go out and about, to be able to, you know, have that like curated experience, even though that's an overused term, curated experience, but then also have it delivered is kind of the best of both worlds. So
yeah, we're you know, we landed on an interesting concept, being able to sort of, you know, our ideal scenarios that you can say, hey, I'm listening to Jimi Hendrix tonight with a few of my buddies, what should we be drinking? Or, you know, I'm cooking steak with my parents and I don't know a damn thing about wine, but I could really use a recommendation to impress, you know, like my dad or my mom for having them over for dinner. There are, you know, a lot of classic everyday situations where you having to go into the liquor store and kind of fend for yourself can be avoided. And then now, naturally, every, you know, businesses being brought online, we're fortunate enough to be able to kind of start poking around with how that works in alcohol and have found a you know, little sweet spot. So it's great.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Kate, I feel like you were making a joke there about Jimi Hendrix, and we missed it with the overlap.
Yeah, we had the Purple Haze beers. I don't know if it's a Colorado beer, but I know I've seen it before.
Yep.
Totally. Well, speaking of delivery and also there's the social aspect which is rolling out. Just curious, Kate, if you have any thoughts or if that's something you guys are looking at from sort of a compliance standpoint. Obviously, it's not live yet, and this COVID situation might delay things a little bit. But is that something you're looking at from the cannabis side?
To clarify, you're talking about the new hospitality licenses they're issuing?
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry. Yep.
No, don't apologize. I just want to make sure that I'm answering you correctly and not getting lost in my own head again. So yeah, you know, we actually have been looking at all the regulations that are surrounding that. We actually just launched in our platform for the transportation side because there's obviously compliance surrounding there, but there's so much legwork to be done before it's really solidified. So what we do before we launch a new portion of the platform is we watch the rollout, see what kind of emergency rules are put into place and how much it shifts. And if that's not a lot within 6 months of issuing the first initial regulations surrounding operations, then we'll dive in. But, you know, the reason why we haven't gone to markets like California or some of the newer places is because there is some time where the actual location needs to work out all the fine details. And the initial structure is generally not the way that it's going to end up being. And from having watched all this transpire multiple times, both with medical, then the licensing, then the adult use, transportation, it's a very common theme. So we've been watching closely, we've been following everything, but we want to also make sure we're building things that are needed and that aren't just an extra thing that you need to be doing. We're trying to remove duplicate actions and streamline the operational process. So for the hospitality side, yes, they have licensing, yes, they have to track certain information, but we want to see, you know, what kind of point of sale is someone going to be using, or a CRM, or these kinds of things too, not only for integration purposes, but also to see if we're potentially reinventing a process that already exists, that already works. You know, obviously we always are into improving upon existing processes, but that does take time just to kind of monitor. So we'll see what happens. You know, I haven't really seen too many successful launches of consumption lounges yet. So, you know, obviously going in, talking to the individual that's making this happen, you know, even holding their hand through the process, it's extremely helpful for us because then we get to see what are they experiencing, what are they feeling, what are things that they're having to do that we can maybe omit or change or shift into something that's enjoyable or fun. Because that's another element that we like to have within the platform is some gamification. So, you know, everyone knows compliance isn't sexy. It's not fun. It's not the pod. It's not the cultivation where you get to see it all happening. But it doesn't mean that it has to be boring, because you have to do it either way. So, having health bars to track things that you've accomplished, being able to see where you're at with your testing strains, and, just trying to make it more fun, putting little gifts in if you get to the wrong screen of roller skating owls. But what we can to like break up the mundane.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, just real quick for those watching, if we want to learn more about Azara, Azara.com, is that the best place to go?
Azara.io. So it's like intergalactic
.io, that's right.
octopus. It's a tech thing. Azara actually
Totally.
is Azara.io. You'll be able to access everything from there. All the consulting services we offer. You can try to set up a demo through us. And then there's a chat bot goes directly to me on the actual website. So if you have any questions, you can reach out directly. And I am pretty good about getting back within at least an hour.
Dang, you're very good. That's very
super
good.
clean landing page. You gave us the plug. I'll give you the plug too. Checked it out. All your questions can be answered, and the design is great.
Okay, thank you very much.
One thing you mentioned, Kate, that I think is just interesting, you mentioned all the different jurisdictions, and we're seeing that now even with this COVID situation, how different municipalities have different restrictions on that. How many jurisdictions, or where are you all operating or advising right now?
So we are live in Massachusetts, Colorado, and just launched in Missouri. And so, it's pretty easy for us to go online in new markets that have been around for at least 6 months to a year. And so, we're open to going to new places, but we've been really going where our clients are going and where they're expanding to, and just trying to focus on that. Breaking down the regulations is something that I really enjoy. I basically take all of the regs, read them once, sit down, kind of move each piece into what category it fits in, whether that's transportation, waste, all of that, gather what we need. All of the forms already exist in our platform. It's just a matter of sometimes changing the verbiage, because operations are operations. Like when you're growing a plant, there's dirt, there's water, there's light. So those are the things, but you might call them something different. It might be UV, soil, or H2O as, one new market. So it's pretty easy to transition. We also have been trying to focus on a local level. So Colorado, we actually have regulations broken down for the major cities that are counties facilitating it. So Pueblo, Colorado Springs, Denver, and Boulder are our main focus, but really easy for us to create checklists for any other markets that we bring on. But that's usually where we have the highest concentrations of licenses. And then some of the other places, like the little places like Oak Creek or Moffett, that don't necessarily have local regulations, we just feed them what we've got from the state.
Okay, that's awesome. Because I imagine they're pretty different, even again, just what I know between Boulder and Denver and, some of the western slopes. So how do you keep up with all that, I guess?
So we actually, our morning routine is to go in and double check that, look at all of the pages, see if there's anything wrong. We also have and I'm not a tech person. I'm a cannabis founder. I'm not the tech founder. So if I use the wrong words, I apologize. But we have I think it's called a scrubber that looks for different things that have shifted on websites. And so it'll let us know. We also are signed up directly for any of the updates for all of the local level information that's passed through, as well as the state. So we're just monitoring that on a daily basis. It's the first thing we do in the morning. And then that way, if there has been a change, what's great about regulatory shifts is that they give you a date that they're going to go live. So you're usually notified of what those changes are going to be before they're put in place, which is huge. And, it always cracked me up when these things would get put into place and you'd see owners very last day going, "Oh, I didn't know. And it's like, well, you did. 6 months ago, they warned you, and you've had this access to this information. So you must have just not worried about it until today. Now it's last minute and you're struggling. So that's the other thing, is if there is a shift that we figure out, we email all of our clients before we create anything or change anything and let them know this day is going to be changed. You can, start moving towards it now if you'd like, but you have until this day to actually start implementing it. But anytime you have the ability to get a head start and start practicing something before it's actually required, I highly recommend, because then you can work out anything that could potentially become an issue. You can figure it out without there being any sort of fine or what's it called, violation associated with it. No marks on your permanent record, if you will.
Yeah. No demerits. I was just thinking as you were saying this, I mean, one of the things about this industry that I think has been a challenge is it is sort of disparate and mom and pop, like you were saying. You know, it's a great community, but because it hasn't been around for hundreds of years, like say the auto industry or the energy industry, doesn't have as much organized power. And I was just thinking as you were saying this, gosh, you're like right in the epicenter of all these folks. Is there any sort of like, I don't want to say lobbying, because lobbying sometimes has like a bad term, but you could build a group like a outdoor, you know, there's outdoor retail and there's different organizations, natural foods organizations. Do you ever sort of lobby or get people together to try and maybe change a rule or get them up to speed on it that way?
So I love that you asked that. So when I first got into the space, I think I was a little bit more spunky in the sense that I would go to all of the work group meetings and, you know, want to participate and really be vocal and social justice warrior. And then as I got into more of the compliance and helping people side, I became so busy and inundated with not only running a business, but also dealing with engineers, doing all the financials, trying to really get it launched, that it's not that I lost that sense of myself, but it was more so my focus was redirected to the building the growth.
Sure.
But, you know, because we're educators, absolutely, we encourage people and explain the process and how it works and what is going to be the most effective way to get change to happen within the space. Here's the information you need for your work groups. You know, there's amazing groups like the Marijuana Industry Group and the Women's Chamber of Commerce and the cultivators groups that are formed. So many. There's even a cannabis tech group, if you didn't know about it, that meets at in Rhino downtown at that cannabis workspace. I can't think of the name of right now, but
yeah. I know what you mean. Yeah,
I know it's like 21st and Market or something.
Yep.
But
it's where the pitch competition was last year. Yeah.
Yep. And so there's just so many different resources, and we're connected so closely to most of them that it's really easy for us to help grow those existing groups that have the ability to focus on those particular things. Because I'm a huge advocate for letting the professionals be professional at what they're professional at.
Totally with you. Yeah. Well, Tommy, just transitioning over, just talking about the change and looking forward, you know, Kate and I were talking about just some of these new things coming online with delivery and hospitality and some of those things. But from your standpoint, I know a lot of our friends who own restaurants now can do curbside pickup of alcohol, and I know you're looking at or you have helped the breweries. So what kind of things are you looking at in the next, I don't know, 3, 6 months, a year that are coming out of this and this new normal that you're looking at?
Sure. Yeah. So funny enough, COVID has really exposed a lot of the antiquated systems within the 3-tier system of alcohol. There's a funny joke I'm sure you guys may have come across that Denver prohibition lasted 24 hours. The initial stay-at-home order went into effect. Breweries and liquor stores, as well as, you know, just recreational dispensaries, were all shut down. To which, you know, what the result was, you know, hundreds of people lining up at the doors and you know, some problems. So I think from a regulatory standpoint, that was kind of the first initial sign of these businesses not only, you know, being necessary, but that you know, people's the demand is always there. It's been interesting on the alcohol side, as I mentioned, in that breweries would traditionally right now, if on-premise dollars were entirely shut down, they would not be able to operate, period. The only reason that they are able to continue to operate is because there was an amendment made to existing regulation that has allowed for them to continue selling their beer. So I think, you know, moving forward, it'll be interesting.
And maybe just, excuse me, real quick, Tommy, just for those who aren't in the know, like maybe explain that amendment a little bit, because maybe that can continue after this, or maybe it will. I think that'd be interesting.
And fingers crossed it will. We will see, as I've mentioned a few times, 1933 was the last time that there were any changes made to this antiquated three-tier system. So essentially what this time period has shown is that in times like this, the unpredictable times, these are staple businesses to the Colorado economy, staple businesses to the economy of the country in most cases, that without this reliance on foot traffic, are totally left in the dust, forced to either close their doors or temporarily shut down. Moving forward, as I was getting into, the next 3 to 6 months will be incredibly interesting to see how those regulations are actually either put into law or what ends up happening from that standpoint, because I think it's going to be quite some time before people are returning to the tap room in, troves of, large groups. That
Sure.
Your traditional tap room experience from the brewery standpoint, from the distillery standpoint, will be changed for quite some time moving forward. So ideally, we'll be in a position where we continue to operate as we have during this crisis to provide liquidity, cash flow to these businesses that are running either pickup operations or delivery. And then moving forward, states are quickly realizing, even from just a liquor store delivery standpoint, that this is, can be a pretty strong hold in their local economy. I know here in Colorado, craft alcohol, particularly beer, is a massive part of our culture. Not strictly from an economic standpoint, but just it's a way of life here. And that has certainly been impacted with what we've experienced over the course of the last, few months or so. And moving forward, I think that there will have to be some significant changes in regulation to allow for what may be the new norm. And that may just be people having to get together for beers in small groups in a backyard versus at the brewery. And regulation is going to have to account for that.
So I'm curious, what do you think is going to happen, Tommy, when the COVID, pandemic scare and all of the stay-at-home orders are removed? Is there any talk? Have you been following any of the regulations that could potentially show that things will go back to normal, that things are going to get updated? What have you seen? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. So there's no telling quite yet. However, all signs are pointing towards there being some sort of lift in regulation in certain states, primarily from the brewery standpoint of things. It's interesting. I mean, the regulatory environment is pretty complex in alcohol, but there's a lot of regulation behind third-party deliveries. So what would be like your DoorDash or your Uber Eats in the food space. In alcohol, as I mentioned, under current circumstances, a W-2 employee of the holder of the liquor license has to make the delivery. And moving forward, there is a chance that, across all 50 states, that third-party deliveries are actually going to be able to be made to, account for people not actually being on premise anymore. So that's in motion. But then obviously kind of the massive hole on the brewery side of things that's been exposed, ideally here in Colorado. I don't see any reason why, the local craft breweries here on the Front Range, elsewhere in Colorado, will not continue to be able to continue operating from a delivery standpoint. It just makes sense for their businesses. It's the way that the delivery economy continues to evolve, the way that online shopping behavior continues to evolve. And this current situation, as frightful as it has been for a lot of local businesses, has poked a lot of holes in this infrastructure that is in desperate need of update. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think
it
that's.
seems to me.
Oh, sorry.
Go, Kate. No, you go.
I think that it's really important to look at that because there are so many things that have changed in our society from a tech standpoint, from the way that we work, from how accessible things are, that most things need a good update. And so the other question that I had, and I apologize for interrupting, but I'm just curious, do you have any plans to get into the cannabis side of things? Because I think that what you guys are doing is so important, especially from an industry that doesn't necessarily have the education or not the exposure rather than the education to information about different product types, different strains, different ways of doing this. Plus, I think there's a little sense of security when it's getting delivered directly to you, especially from an alcohol standpoint, because usually if you've been drinking or you had a beer or two and you invite some people over, there's, now the eliminated element of you having to be able to go out and potentially endangering anyone. Sorry for multiple thoughts there, but
No, it's all good. Yeah, could not agree more. I won't reveal any of our master plan here, but it is in something we've discussed pretty heavily as a team. The model that we've built from a software perspective does translate very well, as you've identified, on the educational side of things, making it comfortable. And then I'm sure everyone can relate, but in many cases, the in-person experience in the cannabis space can at times be not only intimidating, but you just really have no idea what you're getting into. Where a software layer that kind of walks you through it in a funny tone of voice, that has a bit of character, that's able to push you in the right direction, it makes a lot of sense. And that's where the synergy between these two verticals is very much alive. Is that, there's not only kind of a lot of personality there, but there's a lot of discovery to be made. Translating those experiences online is kind of what the next, 5 to 10 years will really hold, to keep the spirit of these two verticals intact, I guess, so to speak, if those comparable in-person experiences are no longer the norm, which is still weird for me to even say, but I think that we're operating in weird times. But yeah, I think that it's definitely in the works, I will say.
Beautiful.
Well, and one of the things for both the industries, I just think, and tell me what either of you think about this, but it would be so nice if you could have a single delivery point, whether it's Uber Eats or Eat Street or any of these, where they could get all your, they bring something from Whole Foods and stop by the dispensary and, bring you your wine. I mean, it's just such a more efficient thing from a ecological standpoint, from an economic standpoint. And it doesn't seem like in any way, I mean, your business model, Tommy, is built to support that. It's not a competition.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. In a perfect situation, we would essentially just be the messengers across, a lot of different verticals that allow for people to place orders in an engaging way. I've alluded to it throughout the conversation, but from a user side, we just want to make it as interesting as it is in person, because that's really where the landscape is shifting. But it is sort of just this software layer that connects local businesses. And that's where we see the not on the tech side, but kind of more on the consumer behavior side of things. I think that there's going to be a tremendous kick back to, local focused shopping behavior. People, have really gotten behind shopping local over the course of the last 2 months. I think that will only continue as, supply chains continue to change. And adding this, what we've come to take for granted, these software layers that connect all the businesses, whether that's a fast food chain, a large franchise chain, or something like that. But being able to connect some sort of software layer to local businesses, I think, is going to be an incredibly interesting niche for the next 5 to 10 years. And for sure in the next 6 to 12 months, as things continue to change. But yeah, we're operating in unprecedented times. I think, for us, it's been a new battle every week, every day. And I know that all of the brewery partners liquor store partners, dispensaries, you name it, are going through the same challenges. So have to continue adapting and evolving. But there's a lot to unpack still, for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I was just reading an article about how many businesses are started during these downturns, and when you look at all the great companies that come out of these choppy times, it's that necessity is the mother of all invention. And obviously, Kate, you've really been not just this economic time, but just a huge need in a vacuum of opportunity, and you've filled that. So chapeau, as they say. Well, we're getting towards the end of the hour. I just wonder, and maybe Kate, I'll start with you. I mean, is there any closing thoughts or things you want to share with people, or kind of parting ideas? And I'll turn to Tommy as well.
Yeah, I think that it's been a really interesting thing to watch this whole, how the world has reacted to this COVID thing, because I think it shows a lot of different holes in the systems that we have. And, to kind of echo Tommy, the antiquated things that we have put in place. So, I think we're getting a lot more refined and targeted on the things that need to be updated, the things that people are requesting in the era that we live in. Beyond just all the tech that exists, beyond just all of the potential scares that the world can throw at us, it's nice to be prepared, to keep educated, to have the ability to stay connected like this, and to speak to how you can change and affect change within the regulations is, calling your representatives and participating in working groups and different city council meetings, and really being active with your voice. I think that a lot of people think that it's going to take a whole army of people to make something shift, and I think it's like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Sean, but like 10 phone calls on a specific thing, or going down like it's minute. So if you can get enough people together that feel the same way, that want to make something shift, we live in a democracy where our voices matter. And I think that a lot of times, because we're not educated on how the systems work, or we feel confused or scared, or maybe like we're not going to be heard, that we get in our own ways. So, there's several ways to affect change: participating, getting groups together, just talking about it, starting the conversation. I loved the idea of starting groups of like-minded people, getting them together. So lots that we can do, and we are a community. And one of the beautiful things that I've been seeing, beyond just shopping local and all of those pieces, is the sense of community that was not otherwise there, being kind of resurrected despite being so far away from each other. So I'm excited to see what kind of changes we get, as we are watching them happen, but even in the future.
That's awesome. No, and I will say I've been, sorry, Tommy, I'll switch over in a second, but just to buttress what you were saying, Kate, I've been hearing so much about supply chain and sort of the buying local and local ecosystems. And we work with a couple other companies in the natural food space that are really trying to buttress that. And it is really cool to see that community be formed and buttressed. So, I couldn't agree more, Kate. So. Yeah, sorry, Tommy. Go ahead.
All good. I was just going to kind of echo that. I think in the spirit of Boulder Startup Week and what the ethos of Boulder Startup Week, that same kind of concept can be mirrored into the space of starting a company or into entrepreneurship, and that's that really just have to get out there and do it. I think one of the interesting things that's surfaced in this conversation is that although we operate in spaces with very high regulation, we found ways to make an impact in our communities. We didn't necessarily just say, alcohol delivery is illegal, or, I don't want to touch that space with a 10-foot pole. We found ways to navigate the space and continued to do so. And I think that translates into our everyday lives now too. Finding ways to continue to uplift local businesses, uplift communities, uplift individuals, but taking a unique lens with, whether that's, in the tech space, the restaurant space, otherwise, there are a lot of unique opportunities out there to seize from an entrepreneurship standpoint. And it's just going to be about the doers that go and change things and can continue to look at things with an eye for optimization and not just like, it's the way it is. That's where we've had success as a company, I'm sure, Kate, you can relate, but I would just encourage people to continue to challenge what's going on around them, and we'll be better for it. So, yeah.
Well said.
Awesome. Can't end on much better than that. So, well, awesome. Well, I think with that, I'll kind of wind us up in this virtual roundtable. And thanks so much, Tommy and Kate. So nice to meet you. I look forward to catching up more. I catch up with Tommy already, so look forward to catching up more with you and seeing how we can help get good folks your way.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll have to grab some coffee once this is all said and done, all three of us.
Absolutely. Well, have an awesome rest of your day, and looks like it's still sunny outside, so hopefully everyone can get a little sun on their face.
Yeah, thank you for hosting, and thanks for leading. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Of course.
Nice
All
to
right.
meet you.
Take care.
You guys.
Bye-bye.